have on how to fix data that you have in your FieldView account, because I know that a lot of guys out there, there's different sorts of operator error and things that might go on in the field that cause our data to get into the system in a way that it might need a little bit of fixing, and we have some tools available that will allow you to do that are pretty cool, and look forward to showing you how that all works. A couple things before we get started here on today's webinar. Number one, I have gone ahead and I've muted the phone lines just to keep all the background noise down, because I know folks tend to be in some noisy places. But the most important thing that I can do in these webinars, as always, is answer your questions. So if you do have questions really about anything related to the FieldView platform, it doesn't need to be exclusively related to today's content. Feel free to chat those in. There's two windows. There's a chat window and a question and answer functionality here on the screen. And feel free to use either one of them to go ahead and type your questions in, and I will make sure that I get to those questions either during the course of the presentation or by the time that we finish. What else is going on? I think that's most of the administrative stuff we need. So let's go ahead and jump in, and we'll start going through the content. And again, I don't think we're going to take more than about 30 minutes here today, so we'll be able to get you back on with your life fairly quickly here. Okay, so starting with a few different slides. First, we want to talk about the how to import data into the FieldView system. And when we're talking about how to import data, let's see if I can get these slides to advance. There we go. What we're trying to talk about here is all my data in one place. This is one of the key pillars of the Climate FieldView platform. What we want to have is we want to have one location where all of our data exists. Every pass across the field is captured so that everyone in the operation has the context to understand what's going on in the field, and we can start using analytical tools to understand what those drivers of yield were. So when we talk about all my data in one place, there's three different ways that we can get data into the FieldView platform. First of all, we can collect it live in the field through a connected cab and something called FieldView Drive. That's not what we're going to talk about today. That's sort of the way to get data into the system as it's happening. We're going to talk about the other two ways to get data into the system: data upload and API. So we're talking about data that wasn't captured live in the field. You've got it on a thumb drive. You've got it in some sort of software, third-party software system on your computer, and you want to move it into FieldView to complete your data record for the fields in your operation. Those are the two things that we're going to talk about here today. So in terms of where we can move data from, I've got a couple of charts here that try and summarize this data. But when we're talking about moving data out of third-party displays, so some of the monitors that you might have in your pieces of equipment on your farm, this table kind of summarizes the current state of what we can and can't do. And so what we're looking for are things that have a yes in them. And so that when we look at this chart, it's basically most John Deere monitors, most Case monitors, most Ag Leader monitors, most New Holland monitors are capable of moving data out of those monitors and into FieldView by taking that thumb drive out of the monitor, plugging into your computer, downloading the data, and then transferring it to FieldView. We can move as planted, as harvested, and boundary files. Now, one thing that's still coming, and we've been working on this for a while, and it's a little bit delayed versus where we would have liked it, is the as-applied data. So if you have as-applied, fertility or spray data in those monitors, as of today, we can't import that information into Climate FieldView. It's something we're still working on. You can capture that data live in the field if you have FieldView Drive plugged into one of those pieces of equipment, but importing the data post-fact via thumb drive is something that we're still working on, hope to have soon, and so you can complete that data set if you're trying to move that old data in. There's a couple other things on here. You can obviously move data from a 2020 system for precision planting, Kinsey Vision monitors, AGCO FieldStar monitors. Trimble is a little bit more difficult. There's some things here. We can move as planted data out of those systems if the data is collected correctly in Trimble. Trimble monitors don't require you to put in some of the details about like what crop you're planting and what variety is. And so what we find is that a lot of times with Trimble monitors, yes, you can move the data in, there's data there, but it doesn't have all the attributes that are necessary for us to make sense of it in terms of what crop it is and what variety it is. So if the data was collected correctly, yes, but there's some issues there usually with the way that people end up using the system to collect data in the field. When we talk about FMIS systems, so if you have your data in another third-party software system, can you transfer it to Climate FieldView? And in a lot of cases, the answer here is going to be yes. As you can see on the screen, if it's in John Deere Apex, if it's in My John Deere, if it's in Ag Leader SMS, Agfinity, SST, Mapshots, Case AFS, all those systems move a lot of data into Climate. And in the My John Deere case, we can actually move it via something called an API, where we just type in our My John Deere username and password, and the data will transfer automatically to FieldView without having to use any thumb drives or downloading data to the desktop and then moving it into FieldView. So we'll show you how that happens here in a little bit. The one that's on here that is not supported is Trimble FarmWorks. It's just a system that isn't really being supported by Trimble anymore, and so it's one that we are probably not going to have compatibility with since it is sort of a legacy system in the market. That said, what does all this data in one place look like? I just like this slide because it's something that someone tweeted about how it works to get what it looks like when you get all your data moved over from all those old systems. This is a case where we had a farmer who had imported 21 years of data into their FieldView account. So now, instead of having all those thumb drives and software systems with data on them in various different places, this farmer can carry around on his phone, on his iPad, and pull up it at his demand anywhere in the world that he happens to be. What do we do in this field all the way back to 1996? So if anyone takes the time to use Data Inbox following this call to import data from all those old thumb drives, and then you get to the bigger data cards when you get back into the 90s, they're not thumb drives anymore, they're different data cards, and if you have all the readers for those, and if you can import data back prior to 1996, please let me know. I'd like to beat this record if someone's able to do it and know what someone was able to load into the system there. Let's do this. Let me go to this Data Inbox upload demonstration. So let's go over and actually look at my iPad, and let's start talking about how this all looks in the system itself. Let me just check here for a second. I think there was one question submitted. One question submitted about all these files, when you do import it, they have to be zipped. We'll cover that in just a minute. And the question here is whether it be zipped or 7-zipped. They have to have that .zip extension on them. So I think it's a normal zipping process that you're looking for there. But let's go over and look at my iPad. So let me share. And you should be able to see my iPad screen in just a second here, so I do this right. There you go. You should be able to see my iPad, and let's go ahead and talk about what this all looks like in the system. And actually, doing Data Inbox import is actually in the web, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But actually, what I wanted to show you on the iPad was, again, a little bit about what it looks like to have all your data in one place. What's the benefits of this? So I'm going to go over here to the Cab app, and you can look at all your data maps in either the Cab app or the Black app. But in the Cab app, if I go to a particular field, actually, I was in a cotton harvester yesterday. Yes, cotton picker yesterday for the first time, and this is some cotton data that we got, so it was fun to try out that new functionality. But let me go over to a different field here. What does all your data in one place look like? Well, this is just an example here where we can split the screen, and if I pull up the right year, hold on, let me get back to the right year here first. It ends up looking something like this, where you can pull up all these different layers of data, and you can say, hey, let me go ahead and look at my planting maps for this field. What variety did we put in this field? And, on the other side of the screen, what was the yield? Or what was the population that we planted this field to? And you can see that we put in a variable rate population in this field. Or, we can go back and we can look in season at things like different applications that we made and say, what was the application rate of this particular spray pass in the field? But this is the benefit of all my data in one place. We have these maps, we can see them, we can pull them up. They're in a mobile platform that's available on any Android phone, iPhone, or iPad, and we can start to use this data to make decisions in the field. And the other reason I wanted to show you this, what does all my data in one place look like, is because we recently added a really cool feature to the CAB app in terms of this all my data in one place and what does it look like. And if I go up here in the upper right-hand corner and click on this reporting button, there's something called a season summary. And if I click a season summary, here I can, in one place, see every pass that I made across this field. I can see when I planted the field first. I can see all 4 chemical passes that I made on the field and what was included in those. And then I've got my harvest pass as the final pass here. So if I'm using the system to import my data or capture my data live in the field, this is a great little summary that allows anyone in the operation in one place to say, hey, what were all the different passes we made across this field? What did we do? When did we do it? And what did it involve? And if I was to come in here and use this Create PDF button at the top of the screen, it adds even a little more detail that shows me, okay, here's when I planted it, and here's the operator who did the planting. And here's my first spray pass, total product rate, or the product rate for each product in the tank, the total product amount in ounces that went on that field, again, the operator and their license number. I've got all my details in one place about who did every pass across the field and what that pass involved. So always adding new functionality here to the FieldView platform, and this is some of the cool new stuff that actually I think this is in 7.6, which isn't public yet. It's coming here very quickly in the next couple days, so you actually may not have this report yet in your FieldView CAB app, but it's coming here in the next couple days, and so just wanted to show you what that looked like. Okay, that said, let's go back and let's do, let me share my web page and we'll get into some of the data inbox stuff, because when we're talking about importing data, it really happens in the web portion of Climate. You have to go to climate.com, and let me get switched over there. I'm going to share my web page. And again, questions about any of this, please feel free to type those in, and we'll be sure to get those questions answered. Okay, so now we're talking about importing data. How does it happen? Well, again, you have to go to climate.com. You have to be not necessarily at a computer, but you have to be at a web browser in your iPad, in your computer. Going to climate.com, you log in, and it looks like this. Now, when you log in, what we want to do is we want to go to, there's an import button here at the top kind of middle of the screen, and we want to click on import. It will take us to what is called the data inbox. And in the data inbox, you have a whole bunch of tabs across the top of the screen that allow you to see what data has already been imported and is waiting for you to approve. Like I have 13 planting files waiting for approval. I have 42 harvest files waiting for approval. And there's the other data types that we can import as well, and showing up there on the tab at the top of the screen. Now, when it comes to importing data, this page is actually really helpful. There's a lot of good stuff on here that's going to help you be successful in importing your data from whatever system it exists in. First of all, we talked earlier about data has to be zipped in order to import. And there's a link down here that says field files need to be uploaded as a zip file, how to zip your files. So if you're not familiar with how to zip files, it is pretty simple. You just right-click on them and you say either compress or add to archive, depending on what system you're on. But there's a link there, first of all. If you need to learn how to zip files, click that link. It'll take you to a file that walks you through the process of how to create a zip file from the data you're bringing in. Another one down here is have data on a My John Deere account, connect an account. So if you have data in My John Deere that you would like to move over to Climate FieldView, you can click this Connect an Account button. It will take you to the settings page of your Climate account, and at the bottom there's this My John Deere, and it says I am not connected. I could click the Connect button, and it's going to take me to My John Deere, where I can put in my username and password, sign in. I don't have a My John Deere account to connect to right now, so I'm not going to show you this step. But if you put in your username and password and you sign in, it's going to ask you, do you want to link these accounts? You say yes. And then going forward, anytime data hits My John Deere, it will be transferred to your Climate FieldView account within 15 minutes. So we poll the My John Deere system every 15 minutes or so to grab any new data that shows up there. So this is a really easy way to bring data into Climate FieldView if you are using My John Deere as a system to capture data live out of the field. Okay, what else is on this page that's useful? The other useful thing on this page is the Check Your File Compatibility link here in the middle of the screen. What does this do? Well, let me click on it and show you. So if you have data in one of those supported systems that we talked about earlier, what we have is we have little 1 or 2 page documents on how to move data out of that system and into FieldView, sort of step by step, every button you need to push on that system's interface to get it out, and then how to get it into FieldView as well. I find these documents extremely helpful because I'm not an equipment guy, and I don't work with a lot of these monitors and software systems in my daily life, so I don't know them very well. But I work with a lot of farmers who are trying to move data into FieldView. And what this does is these kind of guides really give me the confidence that whoever I'm working with, whatever system they have on farm, even if I've never seen it before in my life, I'm going to be able to move data out of that system successfully and get it into FieldView because these guides are here to help me. And let me show you what I mean by that. So let's say I'm working with a guy who's got an ag leader in command monitor. I personally have never worked with one of these in the field before. But if I click this PDF guide, it's going to download a file that if I open it up, it has every step that I need to know about how to get data out of that monitor and into FieldView, starting with getting it out of that monitor. So again, I've never seen this monitor before, but it gives me the steps of power on this monitor in the cab, locate the USB port on the right-hand side, insert the USB drive, and then push these buttons on the screen. So again, I don't need to have seen this monitor before in my life. I don't need to know how to work with it because these documents give me the step-by-step button pushes that I need to get my data out of that system onto a thumb drive that I can then move to my computer. So these are super helpful, and I would suggest that if you are working with a farmer or it's your own data and you're trying to get data off of the monitor in your cab, just go to this page, find the appropriate document, print it out, take it out to the cab with you, and that should make it really simple to get done what you need to get done. And this works both for monitors as well as here's the FMIS information system. If you're trying to move data out of Ag Leader SMS or out of Apex, similarly, we have guides for those types of systems as well. One other thing on this page, we can move gridded soil sample data into Climate FieldView if it is in the right format. And so there's a section here on this page that says, here is the format that we need it in if it's coming out of SMS, SST, MapShots, Premier Crop, GK, Echelon, EFC, all these different supported systems. And if you are moving soil data out of a system that's not listed here, as it says, you can just contact our support team to provide an example file of the soil sample data that you have, and we will map that format to our system so that you can get that soil data imported into FieldView. So if you want to get that soil data layer in, if you have gridded soil sample data, this will help you get that data included and into your FieldView account. Okay, that said, what does it look like, or how do you go ahead about and upload a file now that we have all the kind of background information done? Well, if I click this Upload File button on this page, it's going to allow me to browse my computer and find a file, and I'll just find some data files. These Jefferson Center data files are all farm data that I could import here. Now, I've already imported it into my account, so if I try and import it again, it's going to give me an error, but I'll just show you what happens here. It has to be a zip file to be imported. So if I say, hey, this Jefferson Center boundary file is one that I want to import, I click on Open. It says it's preparing to upload, and then in my case, it says this is a duplicate file. You've already got this field boundary in your account, and this can cause problems if you upload it again. So I'm going to hit cancel. But if that had been a file that was new to my account, it would show up on my screen. And where it would show up is it would show up in the field section because that was a field boundary. If it was a planting file, it would show up in the planting section. If it was harvest data, it would show up in the harvest section. If it was soil test data, it would show up in the soil test section. And what happens is when you import it, it does not go straight into your Climate FieldView account. You don't click the Upload File button and then the data shows up in your account. Where it shows up is on the appropriate tab here in sort of a quarantine. So when I go to this planting section, for example, because I imported some data, it went into quarantine, and I haven't finished importing it yet. Basically, what we're doing is we're importing the data and allowing you, as the farmer, to review it and make sure it's stuff that you really want in your account. Because maybe you take the thumb drive out of your 2630 and it's got all kinds of data on it. Maybe it's got, a couple years of planting and harvest data and field boundaries, and most of it's yours. But you did some custom planting for a neighbor, and you did some custom harvest for a neighbor as well. And so you've got this extra data on there that you don't really want to import to your FieldView account. You don't want it cluttering up your view. It's not your data. You don't really want it in your climate account. So this is why we use this concept of a quarantine area that allows you to view and approve the data before we bring it in. So here I look at this and I say, okay, either yes, all these files are files that I do want to bring in, or you know what, that I don't need these two files. You put check marks next to the ones that you want to bring in. You click import, and then that data will start showing up in your FieldView account. So just something to be aware of, that when you import data, you have to take this additional step of reviewing it, approving it, and bringing it in before you will start seeing it in your mobile app and all the various different places where you look at data. The other thing that happens when you import the data here, is you get a chance to make some edits to it, because I'm bringing this data here. It's pulling in the client farm field information from the data source itself. If I don't like that client farm field, or that's not the right structure that I want to use going forward, I can make changes to that. I could change my farm to Hamlin Farm, or change my client or my field name. Also, I can change crop and hybrid. Maybe these aren't right. The operator made an error and it wasn't a corn crop. It should have been soybean or whatever. Or like in this case, the hybrid names are definitely not the right ones from the AgX database that are sort of the standard crop names. And so I may have 2 or 3 different versions of this hybrid in here. If I want to get it corrected, I can start typing the correct hybrid that was there, and it will find hybrid names. And I can say, you know what, it was actually DKC 4084 was the hybrid that was supposed to be there. Someone had put in the wrong one, and then upon import, that data will fix itself, and you will have the right hybrid reported in your data going forward. So you have that opportunity to fix things as they come in. But that is about it for the importing of data. That's pretty much how it works. So if you come to this page, get your data in the right format, bring it in, you approve it, then it'll start showing up in your mobile apps, the Cab app, the Black app, and online. Now, one other point here, when you're importing data, you can import files that include all kinds of data at the same time. You take that, like a thumb drive off of 2630 or a Pro 700. It doesn't need to be just planting files. It doesn't need to be just harvest files. It can have boundary files, planting files, harvest files all together. It doesn't matter. And when you take that folder off of the 2630 or off of the monitor that you're working with, it's going to have a whole bunch of data in there typically. And all you have to do, just to confirm, is you take that thumb drive out of the monitor that's got all the data on it, you plug it into your computer, and you download it to your desktop. You don't need to go through that folder. You don't need to open the folder and try and parse out the pieces that you want to import. Just zip the entire folder. And when you import it, our system's going to go through it and identify the pieces that it knows what to do with and import those, and just ignore the things that it doesn't know what to do with. Because there's all kinds of things that come in those folders. There's, machine settings and all kinds of other stuff that comes out of the monitor that is irrelevant to importing data. But you do not need to be the IT guy going through that folder and trying to find the pieces that are relevant and bring them out. It's really simple. You just take that folder, you zip the entire thing and import it. Our system will do the rest of the work of pulling out the pieces that are important. Okay, so that's about all there is on upload. Uploading is actually a pretty simple process. It's just a matter of getting it out of the system that it exists in today, and those check your file compatibility documents should be really helpful for you there. Now, the last thing I want to cover today is fixing data that's already existing in your system. And I'll show you an example. Actually, you saw it earlier when I was going through this other field. But why do we want to fix data? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is we've got data in the wrong field. And this usually happens due to operator error, where they're either planting or harvesting, and when they change fields, they forget to change fields in the Cab app as they're collecting the data. And so you've got data from multiple fields all in one field on the system. And what does that look like? Let me just show you here. So I've got this LaRue field that if I go to my 2018 wheat, the planting data was good. Here's the planting data. I only have planting data for this field in the LaRue field. But if I go to the harvest data, when we were in the combine, you'll see that, yes, I harvested this field, but if I can get the rest of the data to load, the operator also went over and into the next field and started harvesting that one as well and didn't switch fields on the cab app. So he ended up with data from two fields all in the LaRue field, and we need to basically take this harvest data from this second field to the southwest and put it back in the appropriate field boundary and take it out of being associated with LaRue. So if you have these kind of problems in your account where an operator forgot to switch fields, you need to put data back in the appropriate boundaries, it's pretty simple to fix. To do this, we're going to go over to Settings in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, and we're going to go to this Fix Data section. And again, this fixing of data can only be done in a web browser on climate.com. It cannot be done through the mobile apps. You have to go to climate.com and log in. Though it can be done from an iPad, it can be done from a computer. It probably could be done from a phone, but those phone screens get pretty small to actually work with all the buttons you're going to need to click. So I'd probably recommend an iPad or a computer. But I go to Fix Data, and what I'm looking for is the 2018 wheat data. That's what I need to fix. And when I go to this Fixed Data page, I'm starting on 2019 here in the upper right-hand corner. So I need to switch to 2018. I'm going to find that LaRue field. Where is it? Here it is. And this is a field that I had two crops in that year. I had wheat, and then I followed up with soybeans. So I need to fix the wheat data is the one that's not right. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's take this LaRue field. I'm going to fix that field. And what do I want to do? I want to reprocess it spatially. And if I click this reprocess spatially, basically it's going to take the data out of the system and it's going to rematch it up with all my field boundaries and say, where does this data belong? So I click reprocess spatially. It says it will move these files to the data inbox. Okay, I'm going to hit continue. And it's going to take a little bit. Let's see what happens. I'm hoping that this finishes before we're done on the call today here, because I don't think it's going to take an hour. It should be quicker than that, but let's see if that finishes. What's basically going to happen here is it's going to reprocess that data, and I'm going to have to go to data inbox. It's basically like starting over again and bring this data back into the system via a thumb drive. So it's going to take the data out, it's going to bring it back in, and it's going to say, where should this data live based on the GPS coordinates of the data? And it's going to say, okay, well, some of this data does belong in the LaRue field, but some of this data doesn't belong in LaRue. The GPS coordinates do not match up with that field boundary. So which field boundary do they match up with? And it should put them in the right place. So hopefully that will process here in the next couple of minutes, and I'll be able to show you how that looks. Oh, yes, sorry, someone just gave me a note that I should have been reprocessing harvest files, and that's true. I just reprocessed the planting files for that field where there were no problems. So that data is going to come back in and be in the right place. I should have been reprocessing the harvest files. The good thing here is nothing is going to go wrong. You're not going to break anything if you reprocess data that doesn't need to be reprocessed. It'll come back in the exact same way it was, and it'll still look good. But in this case, what I should have been reprocessing was the harvest files. There's this selector at the top of the screen that which files we're reprocessing. So let me go back in here and do 2018 harvest files for that field. Well, actually, so the problem I have here is that because I started reprocessing the planting data, the harvest data is not available to be reprocessed until the planting data is done. So we're not going to actually see this totally in action here, but anyway, you won't mess anything up. Feel free to do this reprocessing. It'll always just either bring it back in the way, if it was already good, it'll come back in good again, or if there was a problem, it'll allow you to get that data associated with the correct field. Okay, so that was a little bit of a mistake on my part, but the other thing that I wanted to show you here in fixing data was, let's see, if we want to come here, and if we want to pick a field, let me find planting files again. One of the other big problems that you will see potentially in your data is the same hybrid with multiple names where you need to update hybrid names or variety names to match so that when you're doing your reporting, you don't have two different copies of the same variety and you're getting aggregate reporting rolled up in a proper way. And I've got an example of that here where, as you can see, I've got this Veris2 field that was planted to Westbred-4462. And then I've got this Cliff field where I've got the same variety but without a dash, WB4462. So if I'm looking at yield analysis tools and I'm trying to understand the aggregate performance of Westbred 4462 on my farm, unfortunately at this point, my climate FieldView system is going to think that these are two different varieties and it's not going to aggregate them properly. So if you have this situation existing in your climate FieldView account, the tools to fix it are here as well. So I basically choose the one that I need to fix, and the one with the dash is the wrong one. So I'm going to say this particular field, what do I want to do? I want to edit. So I'm going to use this edit button on the right-hand side of the screen. I click the edit button, and I say I want to edit the hybrid. The crop is still wheat. That's right. I don't want to change that. The original hybrid is Westbred-4462. And I want to go ahead and put in the right name that I want to actually use on this field for this variety. And if I start typing, it should, well, it's not catching up with me quite as quickly as I'd like, but I type in Westbred 4462, get the right variety name in there, and hit replace. It's going to ask me if I'd like to apply these changes. I'll say apply changes. It says this may take up to an hour. It shouldn't take that long depending on how big the field is. But what will happen here once I'm done is now I'm going to have variety consistency in terms of naming in my account, and I'll be able to now, when I run reports of how did that variety do on my farm as a whole, all my data will be aggregated in one place and I will see aggregate performance appropriately here. So this is a problem that I know shows up on a lot of farms in a lot of different places. These tools, again, log in online, go to settings, fix data, and you can use the tools here to update variety names and or reprocess data spatially. Let me just go over to the import and see if that wheat data that I reprocessed, if it showed up. If I go to planting now, I bet I'm going to have, yeah, so this LaRue field that I reprocessed that I didn't need to, well, it's all here, and I can bring it back in, because this is what happens when you reprocess data. It's going to put it back on your data inbox page, and you will have to approve it and say that you really do want to bring it back in after the reprocessing. So I'm going to select all the different pieces of that LaRue field, and there's a bunch of them, and this will bring it back into the right place. Well, that's not the right one. So LaRue, import all those files. It'll take just a few seconds here, and then that planting data will be back. But that's pretty much what the fixing data looks like between both the reprocessing spatially, putting it in the right boundaries, and changing the varieties. So that's about all I have for this webinar here today. So I hope this was helpful. Let me go ahead and check and see if there's any questions of any kind that have been submitted, and we'll then get everyone back on with their day. Get to the right place here. Okay. So questions that have come in, I see a few here. Question about, okay, what, back up a bit to the top here. Is there any way to combine all harvest data for a single field to create one map that's an average of all the years of data to build a better zone for soil sampling and also for creating seed scripts? Okay, so the question here is, yeah, I've got 5 years of harvest data on this field, and I would like to combine those to see the average yield in each part of the field. There's not a way to do that and see a map of it necessarily, but we do have scripting tools that for creating variable rate scripts that allow you to choose which years you would like to have flow into that script. And if you go ahead and so it's a scripting tool that I didn't show today, but our scripting tool does do that. You choose the years that you want to use as the basis for creating management zones in your field, and it will aggregate that data together in some ways that are very similar to, I think, what you're looking for there. So take a look at our scripting tools. We'll be getting into those quite a bit here, doing some demonstrations of those, definitely this winter as we go into the spring so that people know how to use those tools appropriately. And I think there's even some updates coming to them here over the course of the winter. Another question here is, will John Deere data come across if a guy just started using FieldView in the fall, but wants his planting information to come across from the spring? How do we do that and be sure it is in? So I think this is a question about my John Deere. So someone was using FieldView this fall, but he wants his spring planting data to come across as well. Yeah, if you connect to my John Deere, it's going to basically take any data that doesn't exist, that's in my John Deere, that doesn't exist in FieldView yet, and it will bring it over. So even though you've already got fall harvest data in the system, once you connect to my John Deere, it's going to go back and grab that spring planting data out of my John Deere automatically. If you run into any problems with that, there are a couple situations where data might get archived or put in the wrong place in my John Deere where our system can't find it. So if you don't see the data coming across once you make the my John Deere connection, call our support team and they'll be able to help you make sure that we do pull that data over from my John Deere. But the other thing to be aware of when you're moving data from my John Deere, once you make that connection, it's not going to just show up automatically in your Black app and in your Cab app. Where it's going to show up is it's going to show up in that data inbox quarantine area. So you will have to go to the web, go to climate.com, log in, and review the data and approve it before you can start to see it in the Black app and in the Cab app. So it doesn't come straight in. You still need to approve it out of the data inbox quarantine area. A question here about what if there's a piece that was 50% LaRue, for example, and 50% other? Can that be split? I'm not sure exactly what you mean there, Daniel, but anytime you're reprocessing data, what it's going to do is it's going to take the data out of the system entirely, and it's going to say, where is this data located from the GPS coordinates of each data component in it? And it will put that data inside the right boundaries that exist in your field. Or if the data belongs to a part of the world where you don't have a field boundary, it will create a new field boundary around that data and then allow you to call it whatever you want. Another question here is, can you add a variety manually? Yes. So as I was typing varieties, when we're doing that data correction piece there, as I was typing the variety in, it will search the AgX database and try and find a matching variety that is sort of the right, quote unquote, right name for that variety or hybrid. But if you just type anything you want in that box, you can call it whatever you want. So I could have, instead of selecting, DeKalb 5563 or whatever the number was, I could have typed in Jeff's corn variety. It will allow me to type in anything I want there. It obviously won't find that in the AgX database, but it will allow me to use Jeff's corn variety as the hybrid name in that box. You can type in anything you want. We recommend you choose the ones that, if it is a commercially available hybrid, that you use the ones that are listed there so that you get those consistent names across your operation. Let me see here. Question here about what, let me get this pulled up right. Question about what's going to happen going forward with Kinsey's new monitor. Will it be compatible by spring planting? That's a good question. It's one I don't know the answer to. We're always testing and trying to add in new compatibility on different sorts of monitors and systems. I will check with our data team and see what I find out, and I'll get back to you on that, Jeremy, if I get any information for sure one way or the other. Another one here. Question here about, will this webinar be available to view so you can go back and watch it offline? Yes, I will upload this recording, make it available. I'll send it out to everyone in a link after. It'll probably be maybe a couple hours, but hopefully by later this afternoon, I will send this out to people to watch. Another one, can you edit ag chem products? As of today, no, you can't. So far, the editing is for planting data and harvest data. The as-applied data layers don't have the same editing tools as yet, but certainly that's something that's on our roadmap to do and should be coming down the road here. What else here? One says, do you know if Midwest Laboratories is capable of providing a file to import into FieldView with soils data? Basically, any soil sample data can be imported to FieldView if it's in a digital format. So as long as Midwest Laboratories can get you an Excel file or something that has GPS coordinates associated with the data, we can import that gridded soil sample data into Climate FieldView. It's just a matter of us putting it in the right format. So if you're having it, first of all, see if Midwest Laboratories can give you a data file in a software format that has GPS coordinates along with the values. If they can, and they get that data to you, call our support team and they'll be able to walk through how you can get that imported into FieldView. Question here about I'm trying to upload 2019 winter wheat that was planted in the last couple of weeks. It shows up as 2018 wheat. Likewise, past year's wheat varieties are all a year behind in comparing yield reports since it was planted the prior year. No option for the 19 crop year. Yeah, so winter wheat's kind of an interesting one because obviously we plant the 19 crop year in 18. We've got some logic around this that should make it show up in the right year. If you're seeing that that's not the case, Jeff, give our support team a call and they should be able to fix that for you and get it assigned to the proper year. So there's some process I'm pretty sure that they can handle if you're seeing problems there. Call our support team. I'll put that number up on the screen here actually while we talk so that everyone has it in front of them. There's the support number. Certainly just call them and they should be able to get that straightened out. Question here about what if I drove down the road with my drive map anything on and it records as I go down the road? Can I fix that data here or should I call support? Yeah, you can fix that data because basically that reprocess spatially button that I was talking about, if you reprocess that data, it's going to say where geospatially, based on the latitude and longitudes that were recorded for each point, should that data go. And so if you reprocess it, it's going to say, okay, some of this data belongs in the field boundary, and we're going to put that data in here. But then it's going to say the rest of this data that was as you were driving down the road doesn't belong in the field boundary, so we're going to create a new field. And what you can do with that data is just delete it. So it's going to come up for review on that data inbox page, and some of it will be in the field boundary. Import that so you've got the one clean field. But then for the rest of the data, you driving down the road with, to the next field, it's going to show up as a new field. Say, this doesn't belong to any field boundary. Let's create a new field. What do you want to call it? And rather than creating a new field, just check the box and delete that data, and that should fix your problem there for you, Austin. Question about, is there a way to add hybrids after harvest if there was no planting data in the system prior to harvest? We have fields with missing hybrids because we had no planting data. Yes, there is. Well, the first way to do this, Colby, would be to, if you have a planting file on a monitor somewhere, is take the thumb drive out of that monitor, import it, and then you have the planting data. But I'm guessing this is a situation where you don't have an as-planted map anywhere in a soft copy. It was either something planted with like a dumb ground-driven planter or a box drill or something like that. If that's the case, there's functionality in the CAB app that allows you to create an as-planted map for any field, where you just fill in the whole field boundary with a variety or a hybrid. It works as long as it's only one variety in the field at a single population. If you've got complicated planting maps where you split the planter or you were doing a variable rate planting to the field, we can't kind of create those planting maps after the fact. But if it's single hybrids or single variety, single population, we can do it. I know I'm probably I'm not totally late here, but I'm going to actually show how this works just in case people haven't seen it before because it is pretty cool. So let me share my iPad screen. I think this should do it. And I'll show you how this works just so everyone is aware. So I'm going to go back. So this is in the CAB app. And if I'm in the CAB app and I want to create a layer, and you can do this for all kinds of layers. Basically, if you want to capture all your passes or the records of all your passes, whether it's a tillage pass, whether it's a planting pass, whether it's a spray pass, whether it's an anhydrous pass, you can create flat rate maps for those things on any field so that it becomes part of the field record. So the way we do it is we go into settings, and inside of settings we go to data, and inside of data there's this add activity button in the upper right hand corner. And if I click add activity, it's going to say, well, what activity do you want to add? So I'm just going to hit next here, and I'll pick a field. Let me just say I want to let's pick one that I won't mess anything up on. Let's say this I'm trying to find a field that I'm pretty sure I don't have data in. I think the Scott's field. this field, what do I want to do? And so whether I want to add a spray layer, an anhydrous layer, a tillage layer, a planting layer, depending on what I want to add, I have to pick an appropriate piece of equipment that could have done it. It doesn't need to be the piece of equipment that did do it. It just needs to be a piece of equipment that could have done that activity. So I go in here and say, let's pick a planter. Next is to say, what did you plant population at? Oh, I planted at 32,000 seeds an acre. Okay, what was the hybrid? It was DeKalb 5345. Okay, and when did this get done? It was back on April 11th of 2018. I hit next, and I hit add, and just like that, I am going to have a planting map for this field where it's just going to take the whole boundary and fill it in with that hybrid at that population. So I come back here to the map. I go to that field, which was Scott's, I think is what I called it, Scott's field. I go to 2018 corn, and this is the map. I've got a planting map for this field that shows that DeKalb 5345 was planted everywhere in the field boundary. So that's, I think, answering your question there about how you can do this, Colby. I think that's what you were looking for. But you can do that same thing for all kinds. If you want to ever fill in a boundary just to have a data layer there to remind you what date you did it and what went in the field, you can do this for spray, planting, tillage, all kinds of different, pretty much every data layer that exists. Okay, what else do we have? Question about why would harvest double the amount of acres that are actually in a field? Yeah, Aubrey, that's going to be a question for our support team. I would call our support team and say, just explain the situation, which field it is. They'll be able to look it up. And if you've got an 80-acre field that's showing 160 acres harvested, they'll be able to figure out what the reason was there and get that fixed up for you. Question about when using split screen. Can you have two different years of harvest data, or does it need to be split screens comparing data in the same year? That's a good question. I think in the CAB app, it has to be the same year, but in the Black app, you can definitely do split screen of different years. So just check out I think you're right that in the CAB app, I have it in front of me here. Yeah, CAB app has to be the same year, but Black app and on web, you can have different years on each side of the screen if you do want to set side by side some different years. So just use the Black app or the web version to do that. Another question here, can you show an example of what the soil sample map and values look like in climate? Sure. Yeah, let me just, again, share my iPad here so you can see what, because they are pretty cool and they are pretty, it's helpful to have that data there. But let me go to share my iPad again. And let me pull up, you can see those in, I tend to look in the Black app for these, but let me pick up a field here. So this is a field in Indiana where I've got a variety of data associated with it. And let me just go to 2016. So here's a yield map for that year. I can go ahead and as you can see here in the Black app to that other question, I now have 16 data on one side, 18 data on the other side. So here, as you can see in the Black app, you can put two different years side by side if you want to. But if I come in here and I look at base layers, soil tests, this is the gridded soil sample for this data that was taken on, we can see at the bottom of the screen, this was taken on November 9th of 2016 at 1-inch depth. This is the pH data for this field. This is the organic matter for this field. This is the CEC map. This is the P map for this field. So a few different maps available in here that you can use. And the cool thing about this is it's on your mobile devices. It's on your phone. It's on your iPad. And as you're out there walking across this field or looking at crop conditions and or doing emergence checks, this does give you that additional context for what you're seeing in the field. And when you're seeing that, hey, this part of the field is performing better than that part of the field, maybe it's an organic matter issue, and you can and you'll have that context for understanding why you're seeing different patterns in the field. And when it comes to yield, you can also analyze your yield by soil type to help understand how soil types might have been influencing yield in that field. So a lot of really good stuff that can come out of making these maps available. There's a question here about, does climate allow Veris soil sampling data to be imported similar to grid sampling data? Yes, Charles, that's a really good question. We have a data partnership with Veris. We have a data partnership with over, I think it's 45 companies now, where if you are buying a service from them, that data can show up automatically in climate as the way that you view it. Because a lot of times, like these Veris maps, you want to view them next to your planting data and next to your harvest data, and you want them in the same ecosystem or the same world that all your other data is in. So if you buy data from Veris or you've used Veris Sled across your field, contact your Veris person. They can link your Veris account to climate so that those maps automatically show up in climate right here, and then you can use them in the same way. Same thing for a lot of aerial imagery companies like Cherry Beyond and Sarah's Imaging and Deveron and a lot of these companies where if you're buying aerial imagery from someone, you can have it automatically show up in climate so that you can use that side by side with all the rest of your data maps in the place where everything else lives. So contact Veris, Charles. If they are not helpful, contact our support team and they can make sure that we point you in the right direction or get you linked to the right person that can make sure that that Veris data starts showing up in your Climate FieldView account. Question about, can we export all the soil attributes out of SMS and Climate can sort what needs to import? Ivan, what I would say there is, when we were on that data import page, there was that link that said, click here to get the guides on how to download data out of each system. In there, there's one on how to move data out of SMS and how to move soil data out of SMS. Use that guide to take a look as a first pass. That should get you everything you need on how to do it. If you have any questions, though, of course, as always, call our support team. They're fantastic people, and they'll be able to help you make sure that it works out properly. But there is a pretty detailed guide there on how to move that soil data out of SMS that should get you most of what you need. Okay, let me stop sharing that and see if any other questions have come in. Oh, there's a question here about how did I switch to the different layers of the soil test. So when I was in the Black app and I was pulling up that soil map, it's at the very bottom of the screen. There's arrows that allow you to click back and forth to the right and left that will allow you to view the other layers. So on the Black app, first you go to the soil test, and the soil tests are in the they're in the section called Base Layers and Soil Test. That'll get you to soil test. And then to switch back and forth, if you're on a split screen, there's arrows back on the bottom of the screen that move you back and forth. If you're not in a split screen, if you're just looking at soil tests on a single view, all the maps are lined up on the left-hand side of the page. You can just tap on the one that you want to view. A question about, can you import data from SWOT maps? It says they're similar to Veris. Nolan, I'm not personally familiar with a SWOT map, but that sounds like it'd probably be a question for our support team. I would call them, describe to them a little bit about what that is. They may know something more about it, and they'll be able to either help you figure out if it can be imported, how to do that. Thanks for all the questions. This is good that hopefully we're getting people the information they need. But I think I'm running out of questions. Yeah, that looks like, I think I've answered everyone's questions. I don't see any new ones that came in unless I missed something in the middle in there. But appreciate everyone taking the time to join this call. I hope this was helpful. I know a lot of folks are running into rain and some bad weather in different parts of the country, so I hope that clears up for everyone soon and you can get harvest wrapped up. I will be doing more webinars on this topic and on a lot of yield analysis webinars, how to use the yield analysis tools in FieldView. And you can go to climate.com/webinars to see those dates and times. Feel free to sign up for the webinars that make sense for you. And then over the course of the winter, once we get this crop out of the field and we're starting to look towards 2019, coming into the 2019, we'll start offering a whole bunch of different webinars on how to use all the tools in the FieldView platform to get ready for spring planting. Things like creating prescriptions, things like getting set up in the planter with FieldView Drive. So certainly look forward to helping you out there as well. In terms of what's next on my screen here, as it's been up here, find and zip your historical data files, call support if you have any problems, but import that data, get it into the system. And if you have other questions, I am just jeff@climate.com. I've got a really simple email address because I've been here a long time. And when I started, we thought, hey, we don't need last names. There's only one Jeff. Now, of course, there's a few more. If I can help you, let me know. I travel quite a bit, so I'm not nearly as accessible as support, but would love to help where I can. So please let me know if there's anything I can do for you. That said, everyone, I hope you have a safe and efficient harvest and you get things done sooner rather than later and that the rain stops. And we certainly look forward to working with you through harvest this year and into planting 2019. Thanks, and we'll talk to you all soon.